quite different from what we've heard just now. I'm going to talk about how 11ax multi-user MIMO is different from what we've just experienced in Wave 2. My name is Srikanth. I come from India, Nanocell Networks. My contact details are out there. So quick recap, if you've used Wave 2 multi-user MIMO allows an AP to kind of send data to up to 4 clients simultaneously. So you would think that it's great because we have the same waiting time, same preamble time, and so, hey, we should get much more out of it. And if you've been running some throughput tests, you would know that that's not always what they claim as advantages of multi-user MIMO. By the way, it's only available on downlink as of now in Wave 2. So what are some challenges and how is 11ax trying to address that? So that's my sort of objective. So quick note, the first thing that happens in multi-user MIMO is something called channel sounding. You might have seen a lot of NDPs going out on the air, NDP announcements rather than NDPs. What they do is get clients to get ready for measuring, send a null data packet, and then the clients send their beamforming reports. But all these reports are quite big packets, and they have to be polled individually except for the first one. So what I call is this polled serial feedback is a big drawback because these have preambles, and then these are big frames. So the whole advantage of multi-user MIMO to a certain extent gets nullified by this very expensive sounding process. People have done a lot of estimates. I often get the question, how often should sounding be done? Lots of different answers, and you can go on and analyze that, but it's a very expensive process. So that's one drawback. The second, which is not, again, too obvious, is that we get data out very fast from the AP. Data for multiple clients go out quite fast in parallel, right? But then what about the acknowledgements? They again have to be polled. So these block ACK requests have to be sent individually, and all of these are short frames, but they have preambles attached to them. So they all take the SIFS times, the preamble times, etc. Again, a big drawback. So unless you have a really large size packet to be sent over MU-MIMO, all these things pull you down, primarily because you have to spend time on these things, okay? There's another small drawback, which I will probably summarize here, is that these things I've talked about, expensive sounding process, and I write this for the high density because when 11ax was being formulated, one of the questions asked was, don't we have multi-user MIMO to handle that? And here is a short note on why it's not the best fit as of today. It's got an expensive sounding processes. There are client measurements which have to be done very quickly. SIFS after you send the NDP, many clients get it wrong because it's a very complex process, a lot of matrix algebra, etc. Okay? No uplink mechanisms to support sending 802.11 or TCP-AX if you run TCP traffic. And of course, the AP spends a lot of effort. It's quite a laborious process, okay? So 11AC MU-MIMO is definitely not a fit for high density short packets, which is one of the major use cases brought out when people looked at what's wrong with current Wi-Fi, okay? And just to illustrate, this is the whole process in summary. You have sounding, and then the first guy comes up with a feedback, and then you have to poll each of them individually, right? And then, of course, this goes on in parallel. So we were all sold by this parallel transmission, but nobody tells us about this, and also the ACK. I couldn't fit the ACKs into this slide, but you got the essence of it from previous slide, okay? Few other notes on multi-user MIMO. You don't get multi-user MIMO working smoothly because if you have a 4x4, you'd be happy to fit 3 users in. That's the way of that processing as it stands today, right? So it's not going to work very smoothly as claimed. It works only in high SNR, so it does not provide any coverage benefits or range benefits, okay? And of course, I talked about these 2 things, okay? And of course, you need more than one client, MU-MIMO capable client, if you want to get advantage of MU-MIMO, okay? So what's 11ax doing about that? So many of you heard about 11ax and said that, oh, there is OFDMA. Yes, OFDMA is introduced on downlink and uplink, and everybody knows that you have these small units of bandwidth, right? But what is also there is the multi-user MIMO, which was originally proposed only for downlink, now also gets fitted into uplink, and more importantly, they address those problems that I just mentioned, okay? That's very important. Don't forget that we have the old style OFDM and MIMO, that's going on, that's allowed, okay? And When we talk about MU in 11AX, we talk about three options: MU-MIMO, OFDMA, and the combination of OFDMA plus MU-MIMO, okay? So what do they do differently to make it better? Let me summarize and then maybe illustrate. First thing is that when you send downlink MU-MIMO to multiple clients, one of the problems was that the ACKs were not coming back efficiently. So now guess what? We can use what we call uplink OFDMA. In summary, what it means that you can send ACKs in parallel without the individual polling or waiting time. So that's very efficient. The next was sounding process. How do we get the feedbacks efficiently? Again, using OFDMA, you can get those feedbacks very efficiently in parallel. So this is all parallel. All the overheads related to the transmissions are going on in parallel. And we don't have just DLMU scheme as in 11AC. We have an uplink MU, which means that your TCP ACKs can also go on efficiently. So all these things make MU-MIMO in general much more effective, I would say, in 11AX as compared to 11AC. So let me summarize. On the sounding part, you send the NDP announcement, NDP, a common trigger which will allow people to send their feedback rather in parallel. And if you have large feedbacks, you can actually use just one sounding sequence and send those in parallel. So that's very important that you can get your feedback in parallel from multiple users. The second is, what about data? So when you send downlink multi-user MIMO data, you can again send a trigger piggyback on the data, and the ACKs can come in OFDMA in parallel. So which means that you got rid of the feedback inefficiencies as well as the ACK inefficiencies, both by piggybacking or sending a trigger which will allow multiple people to send it back, okay? And what about TCP ACKs? You can still use that uplink OFDMA if the TCP ACKs are short enough packets and you don't want to do a uplink MU-MIMO, you can send this over the OFDMA. So the combination of DL MU-MIMO along with OFDMA for all the uplink inefficiencies is probably one of the biggest, what we say, differences from the 11AC multi-user MIMO, okay? What about uplink multi-user MIMO? It looks tougher, but uplink multi-user MIMO, generally simultaneous transmissions from multiple users, is again preceded by a trigger frame which clearly tells the clients what to do, and it so happens that uplink MU-MIMO has a lot of similarity to the normal MIMO, primarily because it's just multiple streams of data coming from different clients to the AP, and the AP just has to be able to handle those multiple streams, which is what we were doing anyway in the MIMO case, okay? So it's not very different from a processing framework. The only challenges, of course, which are new are the synchronization and power-related challenges, okay? So we have DL MU-MIMO with all the efficiencies. We also have uplink MU-MIMO as and when you need it. So I think that the logic which needs to be present, typically in an AP, because all MU in 11AX, remember MU has three options. All MU in 11AX is controlled by the AP. So nobody can transmit just like that. They have to get a trigger. And so the AP has a lot of power to decide whether it's going to do OFDMA, whether it's going to do multi-user MIMO, or it's going to do a combo, okay? And who is going to get what resources, what MCS, all these are primarily decided by the AP. So AP is getting much more powerful, but I think if 11AX MU-MIMO comes into play, we will find that 11AC MU-MIMO will just be shelved, primarily because we're doing a much more efficient job of doing MU-MIMO, okay? So my last slide is inspired by Keith and many others. We also do a summit in India called Wi-Fi Knowledge Summit. So if you want to plan a trip, feel free, look it up. We have one in March 9th. This is the 5th edition of the summit. All presentations are archived. So please feel free to visit. Invitation for you, okay? Thanks, Keith. Yeah.